So I want to say something about the USA chart today. Um, a couple of points to make generally first, about how this kind of thing works. I mean, I was making a point in previous podcasts that um, we need to be objective. We need to be able to stand back from our own point of view, because views about countries, politicians, whatever, we get strongly invested one way or the other. So first of all, there's that. But then secondly, I need to just stop the recording for a moment. So that was the cat theme again. I do my best so the cat doesn't become a theme of these podcasts, and he managed to. He managed to push over the thing by the cat flap that was stopping him getting in. So I had to go and block that out. Ah, so anyway, yeah. So with charts for countries, first of all, there isn't just one chart. Countries have a number of incarnations. Like the UK, well, we had 1066, so that's a chart for our monarchy. But then we had various unifications, like with England, with Scotland and Wales and Ireland and all of that. And each time the country changes, it's reborn. So, if you're examining a chart, it's like, well, maybe you need to ask, what are you looking for? Yeah. What aspect are you looking for? And that will maybe suggest to you which chart you should use. So that's the first point. The second point is that astrology is divinatory. So if we take the US chart, the one that is used standardly, which is called the Sibly Chart, based on the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July, 1776, I think it was. Well, we know that. That's solid data, but no one knows what time that occurred. So the Sibly Chart, which is used seems to be the most commonly used chart now. The time, which is something like 10 past 5 in the afternoon, was generated using a medieval symbolic method. Nicholas Campion talked about that in his book, The Book of World Horoscopes, which is a great resource of data for countries. You see in there that there's all sorts of charts for one country, depending on, and sometimes you just have to make a choice which one I'm going to look at. So this one for the US, it's not based on an actual historical time. It's based on a symbolically derived time. But the thing is, it works. And that's the mysterious thing. And I think you can have the wrong chart and it comes to work better and better. Because if you're you have to be sincere about it. You can't just take a random time. But it's like a chart becomes a divinatory lens through seeing a person or through seeing a country or whatever. So if you say using a chart for a person and you've been using it for years, you can come to read that person through it. I don't just mean making it fit. I mean, it has predictive power. It has descriptive power to it. Yeah, it's more than just making it fit. Because astrology is about something else speaking through us that tells us something, and we go, oh, wow, yes, that's true. There's no way we could have known that. And that's the kind of magic of astrology. It enchants the universe. It's like everything is connected. Oh, wow, I thought it was just me up against a dead universe. No, it speaks to you. It cares for you. So in that sense, it's divinatory, and the chart becomes a better and better fit. So if you had a chart for years and then suddenly you find out your real birth times and it's 2 hours earlier, well, what do you do with that? What do you do with the old chart? And here's the thing. You have to trust that in a way that new birth time came to you at a particular time for a particular reason. And there was a reason you had the old chart, because it's all divinatory, and you have to have a kind of trust in it. Why did the new time come then and not 5 years before? Did the gods have a hand in it? Yes, we could find a rational explanation for it, but that's not the only means of explanation. In fact, rationality is a very limited means of explanation. There's this huge causality and synchronicity that we're a bit of flotsam or jetsam in, if you like, yeah, but a meaningful bit of flotsam and jetsam. Anyway, so let's go on to the US chart, and I'm going to share it with you. I've got because there's a particular transit to it that is quite striking. But I want to say a few things about the US chart anyway. So let's go on to it. Where is it? There it is. Good. So that's the US Sibly chart. Now, as you can, and I want to just say a few things about it and how it describes some of the things about America. So, because that's fun anyway. So, Mars in the seventh house in Gemini, and it is square to Neptune. So, there is Mars in Gemini. You know, it has a history of engaging in foreign wars. Yeah, Vietnam, Korea, Second World War, First World War. One with Spain, wasn't there, at the, you know, early on in their history? And it's square to Neptune. So that, if you like, Mars square Neptune, that's the cowboy aspect. That's why cowboys get glamorized. These figures of violence, you know, the gunslingers, yeah, Hollywood, Neptune. So that's a great one. But also, you know, their foreign wars, what are they about? I mean, you know, Vietnam, they got bogged down. Iraq, they got bogged down. Afghanistan, well, they got bogged down. They spent 20 years there and then left and gave it back to the Taliban. What was the point of all of that? So there's an element of illusion around it. I'm not saying that there isn't good reasons for the wars. We like to just go, oh, it's what business have they got doing there? Well, in Vietnam and Korea, it's like, you know, there was this left-wing, aggressive, murderous left-wing authoritarianism taking over the world, communism, and they wanted to oppose that. And you know, because it was communism was empirical, imperialist, sorry, not empirical, imperialist. It wanted to spread all over the world. So they were opposing that. So in a way, quite right. But good did it do? You know, what were all the other reasons? You know, who knows? Sun in Cancer in square to Saturn in the 10th house. Now that's quite an interesting thing because the Sun in Cancer, if you like, that's the goal of the mission is the Sun, and it's Cancer. So it's the homeland. Yeah, America's very big on its homeland. A lot of Americans never travel to any other country because they've got such a big country themselves. They call their, is it baseball? They call it the World Series. I mean, well, it's not. It's a bit suggests that they think of their country as the world. And its goal is also is Cancer, is to take care of its own people. Now it's square to Saturn. And well, look at the battle Barack Obama had to get some kind of healthcare in. Previous presidents had wanted to and couldn't. So there's the square to Saturn, because Saturn can often stop that kind of more feminine side. And Saturn goes, no, all that matters is what you're worth, what you have to show for yourself, how much you're earning, what you've achieved. Now, obviously, there's something good in all of that. Sun square Saturn, people can achieve a tremendous amount, but they can be a bit cold. They can be a bit blind to inner values. So America can put a man on the moon. America can build the first super tower, the Empire State Building, but it can't have a decent health service. So that's the challenge in the chart, is taking care of its people. And as Saturn in the 10th, it's prominent in the world. It's the number one in the world. So that's one or two things about the American chart. Oh, yes, also Uranus on the descendant, Uranus opposite the ascendant. It came about, its origins were in rebellion, which is Uranus. And that leaves America with its ongoing issues, if you like, around authority. It's it's really circumscribed what the president can do. The president, who's their leader, has got very little power indeed, far less than most leaders, because Americans, because their history was having a king 3,000 miles away, yeah, who had power over them. You know, from their point of view, that was tyrannical, and they, you know, they're very cautious about any tyranny developing to the extent that they almost neuter their president. And so they're proud of having broken away from tyranny, of breaking away from monarchy, and yet they love the British monarchy. Secretly, they would love to have a king, which is why they turn their presidents into royal families. Yeah, the Clintons, the Kennedys, even the Obamas, probably, the Bushes. They've all got a kind of aura of royalty around them in a way we don't with our prime ministers in England. We let the Queen have that, and that's a good argument for a monarchy, is that they can carry all that projection, and the leader can get on with actually running the country. It's a pragmatic point I'm making, not an ideological one. So we see that ambivalence about authority in the Sun square Saturn, and also in the Uranus opposite the rising sign. That's said in two different ways. It makes it quite pronounced. Moon in Aquarius in the third. Well, the moon is the people chart, and there's democracy for you. Aquarius, it's what the people want. There's a lot of good things about it, and there's a lot of not so good things about democracy. It's not a sort of perfect system to which we're all heading. Pluto. America's just coming out of its Pluto return. Pluto's in the second house in Capricorn. It gets its power from wealth, second house, and it's standing in the world, Capricorn, which is also reflected by Saturn in the 10th house, its natural house. But it's just had a Pluto return. And it's like, what is the source of our power? Now that China will inevitably overtake us economically and eventually militarily. Who are we if we're not number one? What is the source of our power? It's almost like Pluto in the second house is that pioneer mentality, survival, because Pluto is where we survive. And you know, if we're not supremely wealthy and important, we won't survive. Who are we? So there's a deep questioning for America to do, and that maybe keys into the Sun square Saturn. Yeah, maybe we want to take care of ourselves better. Maybe those values matter more. So yeah, that's one transit it's just had. But what it's got coming up is Neptune at the bottom of its chart. Saturn and Neptune at the bottom of the chart, opposing the top of the chart. So what's the top of the chart about? Where we're most visible? If you like, that's the institutions of government. That's the leadership. Whereas maybe the Sun describes more the actual leader. I don't know. You can play with these things a bit. But certainly the institutions of government. And Neptune and Saturn opposing that next year. That's a double whammy. I mean, Neptune and Saturn coming together is as powerful as Pluto and Saturn coming together, because Neptune is kind of equally powerful to Pluto as a transformative agent, particularly at the moment, because they're both moving at the same speed through the sky and have been for a while. Neptune will eventually speed up, but for now, we can forget about Neptune, because that's the nature of Neptune, to get lost. It's like, oh God, I didn't think about Neptune. I didn't talk about Neptune, and it sneaked in through the back door through not being mentioned. So let's not forget Neptune. And of course, America's had a Neptune return, same time as there you go. I forgot it. I mentioned the Pluto return. Oh, it's not a Neptune return. It's a Neptune opposition Neptune, but all the same, it's very major, and I forgot it. Yeah, that illustrates my point. So I wouldn't say that's as powerful as Pluto return. A return is more powerful. It's the completion of a cycle, but it's still, you know, it's still got this kind of who are we now kind of quality to it. So yeah, we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 2020, and we saw what happened there. It was like this blast, yeah, COVID. And it's to do with the power of government, power Pluto, Capricorn government. And government took control. It's since given it back, but it showed us what governments can, reminded us, because it does that in wartime as well. In a way, it has to. Saturn-Neptune, and this is going to impact the US chart much more strongly, because it'll be almost bang on the bottom of the chart and opposite the top. Yeah. So what's that about? Well, if you look at the US election coming up, the two main candidates, we will have a new president, or sorry, they will, or we will, I'm English, but we will have a new US president next year coming in under that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I think it's almost conjunct next year, as good as, but not quite, and fully conjunct the year after, but they will both cross bottom of the chart. So it is happening then, and it's going to go on. And you've got two candidates, neither of whom are arguably fit to be president. One for reasons of mental decline, Joe Biden, and that, if you like, is Neptune. And the other for reasons of ethics, his personal behavior and being accountable for it. That is Donald Trump. Two candidates, neither of whom are fit to be president. Joe Biden, you've seen it in the way, a report came out earlier this year in which his mental capacities were questioned. He couldn't remember the year he became vice president, which of course was 2009 under Obama. I saw a video of him recently talking about a brother or an uncle who died in the Korean War and come down, his plane had crashed in the sea and they hadn't never found his body. So he interpolated it was crashed near New Guinea and we never found the body because they're cannibals there and he got eaten. Yeah. Now this wasn't true. He wasn't lying, but it was like him, the brain going into decline, and you see this with alcoholics, it will put something in where it doesn't know, it will just make something up and put it in. So he put that in. Yeah, and he didn't know he'd done it. And that is a sign of mental decline. And then Trump, so that's Neptune, Trump being accountable. After the last election, he undermined people's trust in the whole system by saying the election was stolen, it was false. But he could find no evidence of that. He could present no evidence of that. So you don't do that because you undermine people's trust, basic trust in the system. Of course, the system's a bit dodgy. It always has been. All systems are. But there's a basic trust required. It's the basic fabric of society. And it's one of the most egregious things you can do is to undermine that which holds us together, that kind of trust in the system. And that is Saturn. And that is where he's accountable. And yeah, of course, it's partly a witch hunt, what's happening to him with the trials, but there also is accountability. So that is the point I wanted to talk about, or I wanted to mention. There is this big explosion or change or turbo depth charge, more like a depth charge. An undersea depth charge is more like a tidal wave because it's Neptune rather than Pluto. Pluto's more like a sort of slow earthquake, if you like. Neptune, because it's the sea, is more like a tidal wave of confusion washing over American democracy and over its institutions. How that's going to pan out, I don't know. I mean, I don't think America's going to fall apart. There's a small chance of that. But there is just this like confusion around. Yeah. And not only are these two candidates unfit in various ways, they're also really, really old. And what's that about? It's the last gasp of Pluto and Capricorn, if you like. The power of age, because Capricorn is a sign of age. And yet they've both got Pluto in Leo, the sign of youth. How interesting. They're remaining youthful in a way into old age. Well, Trump certainly is, but he's got Leo rising. Biden doesn't seem to be. He is notably doddery, but he's still managing to be the main candidate for president. So that's a Pluto and Leo thing. Anyway, maybe I've said what I've got to say for this one. It's just that maybe summing up the point I have to make is that this US election coming up is pivotal because it's happening under Saturn and Neptune opposing the MC. What the outcome is anybody's guess, but it will be looked back on as very significant. And there'll be good stuff as well as bad stuff. I mean, I don't want to put anyone into crisis mode about it because it's very easy to put people into crisis. People love a crisis. We're almost geared for it because we know where we stand. You know, that's what we're up against. This is how I need to live. Bad news. We love it all. And astrology can be used. Oh, you know, you see some astrology kind of podcasts or whatever or writing, and there's always some kind of big drama. You know, this is going to happen. And it's in very general terms. Well, I don't want to do that. I don't believe in that. I believe in going in the opposite direction because we can't think once we're in crisis mode. We just think we have the secret insight into the drama because we're astrologers. We don't. There isn't necessarily a huge drama. It's business as usual with a, you know, nuanced in some way or another. And you often need a long-term perspective to see what happens. Now, because Saturn is involved, there may well be events. Yeah? Because Saturn makes things manifest. A bit like when the Berlin Wall came down. You had Saturn conjunct Neptune and Uranus. So we had actual events and this sudden fall of the whole of Eastern Europe. Without Saturn being there, we'd have looked back and we'd have seen a powerful, subtle shift from Neptune and Uranus, but you have to look back to see it. So there will be events around it. Uranus is very operative in the charts of both Joe Biden, it's opposite his son this year, and in Donald Trump. It's on his angles, crossing the top of his chart. So anything could happen. Joe Biden's mental decline is, I think, a lot worse than where it's being let on. There'll be stories about it 10 years down the line about just what it was like in that White House. Yeah, we all kind of know they have to make it look like it's holding together. So he may not be the candidate. He may just become it may just be too far gone. It may just become obvious. And Trump as well. Well, these court cases against him, who knows where that's going to go? Neither person may be candidate by the time November comes. With Uranus so operative in both of their charts, you just don't know. We just don't know what's going to happen. That, in a way, is the fascinating thing about it. But there is an underlying sea change, Neptune. And it won't just be one we need to look back on. It will also manifest in events, particularly from the autumn onwards, because Neptune's got a long retrograde journey to do, and so Saturn over the course of the summer. And come the autumn, they will both turn round and move forward. Late autumn, probably just after the election. But the election will somehow reflect that going forward into the future. So it could be neither of them that is president. That's perfectly possible as well. And who knows what this sea change is about? It could be about anything really. Okay, we'll leave it there. I better stop sharing and come back and stop the recording.